There's a rich dynamic to life. Sometimes these dynamics work in my favor, other times they don't. Hey folks, welcome to the channel, Thinking Theology. I'm Don. Today I'm looking at Stephen Hawking, just a quick snippet on his views on God. I've not seen this. I've seen a bunch of Stephen Hawking stuff over the years, but the most comical one, I suppose, was when an interviewer asked him something about what is one thing that you do not understand. And he said, well, of all the things I've ever studied and contemplated in depth, the one thing I do not understand is women. I was like, yes. But as far as the channel goes, one, I'm going to make a comment. I may make a separate video because some folks out there who just, I could just say, you're not that bright. Either that or you just have hair trigger tempers and just that gets in your way of actual contemplation. The name of the channel, Thinking Theology, as I've said many times, is not establishing theology. It's an ellipsis, if you will, thinking about theology. You may not like the premises that theologians and religionists and fundamentalists use in their thought, but to come out and say, as some of you have said, that there's nothing thinking about it, or there's nothing logical about it, or there's nothing redeeming about it, whatever you want to say, you're just wrong about that in the sense that thought is broken down to just cranial activity, brain, neurons firing. You may not like the way they fire in some people, but the notion that there's not thought taking place is absurd. And I took a cue from one of my philosophy professors at Rutgers, himself an atheist, Tim Maudlin. He teaches philosophy of science, among other things, and he wasn't a lightweight professor. Rutgers has the #1 philosophy department in the country, #2 in the world. NYU and Rutgers go back and forth between the #1 and #2 spot in the country. Tim is now at NYU. He himself said in one of my classes years ago, he believes the case for evolution has been made very clearly. But he said some of the deepest ideas in philosophy come from religion. And I thought, wow, that's very open-minded of him. And so I sort of modeled myself in that way to be open-minded. Thinking theology is just looking at theological, whether they're pro-theological, pro-religion, pro-God arguments, or anti-religion, anti-theology, anti-God arguments. It's just assessing the arguments being made. So if you can just say, look, I heard what you said. Whoever the preacher is or minister may have said, I disagree with it. In fact, I think it's dumb. Fair enough. I couldn't care less. So let's see what Stephen Hawking has to say on God.
And it's my view that the simplest explanation is, there is no God. No one created the universe, and no one directs our fate. This leads me to a profound realization. There is probably no heaven, and no afterlife either. We have this one life to appreciate the grand design of the universe. And for that, I am extremely grateful.
All right, let's look at this. It's my view, Hawking's view, that the simplest explanation is there is no God. All right, that's simple. It doesn't speak to the veracity of it, but it's the simplest explanation. Fair enough. When I say fair enough, I don't mean I agree or disagree. I'm just saying that there's no reason to gainsay it until you know more about what he means by it. No one created the universe, okay, and no one directs our fate. I do agree that no one directs our fate. I just never believed God was in control. If there is a God, I just never believed that he, she, it was directing our fate. My choices, my consequences, good, bad, or otherwise. There's a rich dynamic to life. Sometimes these dynamics work in my favor, other times they don't. Unforeseen, unpredicted things that I didn't predict would happen. You take a job and it turns out to be really good, better than you thought. Sometimes it turns out to be shittier than you thought. Relationships, whatever. There's a dynamic to life. You made a left turn and What you didn't know is that avoided the truck that was careening toward you had you made a right turn. You never knew that. Silent evidence is what it's called. Survivorship bias, whatever you want to call it. But then no one directs our fate. I never subscribe to that. No one created the universe. All right, fine. That's what he believes. I do not know. There's not a way to know that. That is simply a matter of belief. I don't disagree with them. He said, this leads me to a profound realization. There's probably no heaven. Now, he waffled on that, interestingly, and no afterlife either. So, okay. Interesting, though, probably no heaven. When I said there's no heaven, I mean, that's a fair statement to make. Whether you believe in God or not, when you hear someone else say something like that, it just means the evidence is unconvincing. They haven't been convinced by what they've observed. And I respect that. We have this one life to appreciate the grand design of the universe. And for that, I am extremely grateful. Now, the interesting thing here is the notion of a design to the universe. That brings in the notion of a designer. So that kind of brings it back to the adjective he used. It's my view that the simplest explanation is there is no God. Yeah, that is simpler, because then you don't go down these other paths that require more explanation. How do you account for there being a God, not a God? What do you think of the Bible? I mean, that complicates things. It is a lot simpler just to dismiss it and say, unconvinced, there's no God, let's move on. But he then came back and said there's probably no heaven. And that is interesting that he worded it that way. I guess even he knew, as a lot of atheists know, I think Dawkins and Hitchens all said, look, I don't know. We may find out one day there was. I'm just unconvinced by it. Nothing I've read, the Bible, nothing, people, arguments have shown me that there was. But interesting that Hawkins said that. But as far as the grand design of the universe, it does the way we humans conceptualize origins of things. If something is designed, there's a designer to it. And maybe simply what he meant by that is like how it's laid out, how it works. When you get into quantum mechanics and probability theory, there are some issues there, but over time, maybe you can resolve those. Then we look at the amount of material matter in the sun, just our sun, that burns every second. I saw something about a year ago that suggested there are something like 1 billion or 2 billion tons of material are burned from the sun every second. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly. And if that's true, it's just how do you even conceptualize that, let alone the size of the universe, how some stars, the galaxies seem to be moving away from us faster than the speed of light, which Einstein had said and theorized is impossible, and yet it seems to be happening. But we wonder about these things. Just the speed of light, just the size. The nearest star outside our solar system is 4.5 light years away. Roughly, it's 25 trillion miles away. These are things we can't conceive of or conceptualize. But anyway, as far as what Stephen said, you guys can leave your thoughts and go from there. Have a great day, folks. I'll see you on another video, and keep thinking theology, or if you prefer, thinking about theology, whether you hate it or not. That's all this channel is about. See you on another video.